I just don't really think it's possible to compare over-the-counter hearing aids with over-the-counter reading glasses. Hey guys, welcome back to the DrCliffAuD vlog. This is vlog number 263, and today I want to compare the differences between over-the-counter reading glasses that you can find inside of optometry clinics and over-the-counter hearing aids that you probably will not find inside of audiology clinics. But before I get to it, do me a huge favor, click the like button, really helps out the channel. And if you are not yet subscribed to the channel with notifications turned on, go ahead and do that as well. It is greatly appreciated. That being said, let's get into the topic here. So a few weeks ago, a colleague of mine posted a question on LinkedIn asking if it would be a good idea to offer patients who come into our audiology clinics the option of purchasing Apple AirPods Pro 2. And really, this is a bigger question about whether or not offering over-the-counter hearing aids inside of an audiology clinic makes any sense. And there were a lot of people who chimed in to answer this particular question and at least give their opinion on this question. You had people in the camp of absolutely you should be offering over-the-counter hearing aids. It's something that improves your hearing, and if you're going to be coming into an audiology clinic, you should be offering a wide range of options for any type of patient who comes in the door, whether they can afford professional level treatment or whether they can only afford over-the-counter level treatment. And then you had the other side of the, I guess, argument. It wasn't really an argument, but the other side of the coin, which was, no, we can't be offering over-the-counter hearing aids inside of the clinic because there's not enough margin in there for it to make sense, and it would ultimately take away from our prescription hearing aid sales. So I want to dive into this a little bit, and just to give you an understanding here, I am coming from the perspective of an audiology clinic owner. I know what it costs to run a clinic, and I know what patients are looking for when they're coming into an audiology clinic. So that is definitely going to bias my opinion on whether or not we would be able to sell over-the-counter hearing aids inside of the clinic or not. Now, a lot of the people who were giving the pro OTC side inside of an audiology clinic were citing things like, oh, well, it works in the eyeglass industry, and it's, something that's great for people who can't afford prescription hearing aids. They can at least have something to go home with, and that could help them from a hearing perspective. But a lot of the individuals who were commenting on the pro OTC side inside of an audiology clinic were all non-clinic owners. So they have not saying they have no idea what it's like to run a clinic, but from a financial perspective and from a just understanding the inner workings of an audiology clinic, they just didn't have that perspective on it. Now, I'm not saying that my perspective is perfect. I'm trying to see it through both lenses here. I've promoted over-the-counter hearing aids on this channel pretty much since it started. And even though over-the-counter hearing aids haven't become a technical term until just a few years ago, there were always devices that you could purchase online that were not officially prescription hearing aids, but they were definitely hearing aids. So let's get into the three big reasons why I do not think that over-the-counter hearing aids should be offered inside of an audiology clinic, starting with number one, which is the margin is too low on over-the-counter hearing aids. So there are some major hearing aid manufacturers that do produce over-the-counter hearing aids that we could purchase those over-the-counter devices from, have them inside of our clinics, and offer them at a higher price than what we purchased them for. Okay, so you're looking at anywhere between what, like a $200 to $500 margin in most cases. On top of that, we have to actually have the shelf space to offer these particular products. So there has to be somewhere you can put them inside of the clinic, whether it's on a shelf in the back or whether it's on a display in the front of the clinic. You also have to have the manpower to do the ordering of these products, to actually do the selling of these products, the stocking of these products. There's a whole lot of expenses that go into offering an actual device inside of the clinic. Everything has serial numbers, everything has to get entered into the software, everything has to get tested for quality control, like all of the things have to be done. And then there's the transaction costs that exist when you have a high dollar item but low margin. If people are paying for credit card with that, guess what? There's additional fees that are coming out with that that actually make it very challenging to offer an affordable over-the-counter hearing aid option inside of a clinic without losing money. Now, when you look at an optometry clinic, there is enough margin on just over-the-counter reading glasses that they can justify having them there. There's no pre-testing that have to be done. They just come in and they sell them the way that they are. Honestly, it's just easier for an audiology clinic to tell people, hey, listen, you can't afford prescriptive level care, so just go buy over-the-counter hearing aids and just tell them to go online and not buy them inside of the clinic, because it just doesn't make financial sense to offer them that inside of the clinic. The second reason why over-the-counter hearing aids are completely different than over-the-counter reading glasses is that the performance is completely different. So while you can go and buy whatever power of reading glasses that you need to from an optometrist over the counter, those are going to work pretty well for you, okay? To the point where you're like, yeah, these are good enough for me to get by. I'm having no issues really reading. Could it be better? Yeah, maybe, but ultimately it does pretty well. And then you have the over-the-counter hearing aids, which really from a performance standpoint are not that good. I mean, I've tested a ton when I've reviewed them. You have third-party independent hearing aid lab, HearAdvisor.com, that reviews these over-the-counter hearing aids, and all of their performance really is not good unless you've had them tuned by a hearing care professional, which kind of defeats the purpose of an over-the-counter hearing aid. If you have to have it professionally tuned and programmed and verified by a hearing care professional, you are adding on to the cost of that device, and again, completely defeats the purpose of an over-the-counter hearing aid, because you can likely get prescription hearing aids from a hearing care professional with the professional care at a similar cost that you can buy over-the-counter hearing aids with professional care, and the performance of a prescription hearing aid is going to, in almost all cases, in fact, I might even say all cases, that they would outperform an over-the-counter hearing aid because you are limited in what you can do with an OTC device. On top of that, people are more inclined to purchase multiple pairs of readers. You are not going to likely be purchasing multiple pairs of over-the-counter hearing aids. They are still expensive enough for you to be like, whoa, I'm just gonna buy one pair of these. I'm not gonna buy 4 or 5 pairs like I would with reading glasses, with over-the-counter reading glasses. So again, you're running into this limited margin where you would actually get more margin and more sales from an over-the-counter reading glasses than you would from an over-the-counter hearing aid. And the third reason why I do not believe that you'll ever see a lot of audiology clinics offering over-the-counter hearing aids is because it would ultimately cannibalize prescription hearing aid sales. Now, you can hate me for saying this if you want to, but let's just face it. When people come into an audiology clinic, most of them are looking for professional level care. If they were a good candidate for over-the-counter hearing aid, they would not be waltzing into an audiology clinic to get an over-the-counter hearing aid or to even consider that as an option. These over-the-counter hearing aids were intended for people with perceived mild to moderate hearing loss who are adults and who are relatively self-sufficient in their own setup of their devices. If you're having to go into a hearing care professional to hear about that as an option, you're probably already past the point where you'd be a good candidate for over-the-counter. I'm not saying you wouldn't be a candidate, I'm just saying you wouldn't be a good candidate. And what would ultimately happen is that if you go into an audiology clinic and you have a, let's say, mild to moderate hearing loss, you ultimately would get better performance with the prescription hearing aid set up professionally. But if you go in and you see, oh, well, I could purchase an over-the-counter hearing aid from you for $800, $1,000, $1,500 and not spend $3,000 to $7,000 on a pair of prescription hearing aids, I'm going to pick up the OTC devices and take those and be on my way. And like I said, if that ultimately cannibalizes the sales of prescription hearing aids, you won't even have a clinic to go into when you run into issues with those OTC devices, or if you want those OTC devices set up professionally by your hearing care professional, because they will literally go out of business. If you even took 30% of the hearing aid sales inside of my clinic and you converted them over to OTC sales, then we would ultimately be not profitable inside of the clinic, and we would have to shut our doors, and then we don't serve anyone in our community from any capacity, whether it's OTC or prescription. Sure, there's the hope that people would purchase over-the-counter hearing aids, realize that they are not effective for them, and then go the prescription route. But honestly, there's a lot more of the case where people try over-the-counter hearing aids that don't really work that well for them, and they just think that hearing aids don't work at all. It is truly my belief that as an audiology clinic, we can't be everything to everyone. If you're the type of audiology clinic who operates on razor-thin margins, is offering discount-level care, is not giving a ton of services with hearing aids, and you're able to squeak by on a small margin, then maybe it makes sense to have over-the-counter hearing aids inside of your clinic. But if you're a high-end audiology clinic that is like concierge level care that's following comprehensive audiologic best practices, then offering an OTC device probably doesn't make that much sense because it takes away from the core of what you're trying to offer, which is helping people hear their absolute best. So that's really the question that audiology clinics have to ask them. Is it your goal to achieve the optimal level of hearing treatment, or is it your goal to make an accessible option available inside of your clinic, even if you have razor-thin margins or even lose money on every single transaction? Ultimately, I don't think that offering OTC hearing aids in an audiology clinic is good or bad. okay? It's just, if an audiology clinic can make it work, then by all means make it work, but you're probably not going to find a lot of audiology clinics that can.